One of my favorite things that we talked about was high impact instruction. And I had a lot of big takeaways from that. But I'm going to focus on John Hattie's article, 2003, about effective teachers. One of the main things that I learned was that expert teachers and experienced teachers might have the same amount of content knowledge, might have the same amount of instructional knowledge, but expert teachers know how to teach it better, and they know how to use that content knowledge in the classroom. And so there's lots of skills that they have that experienced teachers don't. They can relate whatever students are learning to a deeper set of principles. Expert teachers can concentrate on areas with a greater instructional significance. Expert teachers are generally more responsive to students, more responsive to their needs and where they're at, can tell what's going on in their minds if they're confused, more so than experienced teachers. And expert teachers can also recognize sequences of events and how they will affect student learning. I think these are all skills that are definitely acquired. I don't have them already. I can identify what those skills are and really work on how to develop those skills and enhance them in the classroom. So I really liked how the article can kind of frame that vision of a really good teacher, of an expert teacher, and I look at those skills and see where do I want to be, and then I can kind of go for that and work on those skills. So that was definitely a big takeaway for me. Expert teachers are able to monitor student learning and give feedback to them. And so there's some details that we learned about from different sources. The first is that expert teachers give direct and immediate feedback. And I believe Hattie mentioned this, but Daniel Pollitt mentioned it in his lecture, and so did Jim Knight. Daniel Pollitt also talked about not only direct and immediate feedback, but positive and measurable feedback. And I think that's really important, because when we give students feedback, we want to let them know how to improve. And if it's not measurable, then they don't really have anywhere to go from there. They're also able to anticipate, plan, and improvise as according to the situation. So they're really, it's like they have this set of x-ray vision that they can see the students and understand all these things that are going on in the classroom. They can, according to what's going on, they can kind of improvise or plan in a different way, anticipate what's going to happen. That is a really important skill. I hope I can learn that. I'm sure with more experience I will, but that's pretty cool to be able to do. And they also just have, in general, a problem-solving stance regarding students' learning. So always, instead of just blaming the students, problem-solving with them and working with them. And I think that attitude really affects how students perceive the teacher. One of the other main topics we talked about in class was instructional planning. In Chapter 3 of Teaching Content for All by Lenz and Deschler, there were a lot of good points on how to plan a unit. And one of the main things was to establish a routine. And that seems pretty simple, but I'm kind of, I don't always like to do things the same way. I like to experiment. And I think that has a place, but when you're doing something important like planning a unit, I think it's good to have a routine. I've actually only planned, I think, 2 units as a student at KU, so it's something that's a little intimidating to me. And so this was definitely a big takeaway, to have routine, and then they give some common things to do. The first is to identify guiding or key questions that you're going to have in your unit. Collect evidence about answering those questions or addressing them. Then identify and teach those expectations. Jim Knight talked a lot about using thinking prompts, and I think those are really good, especially as an English teacher, because I really want to work on critical thinking skills with my students. So I think thinking prompts are a great way to get students' brains rolling, to get them focused, to kind of pull together whatever those essential questions are of the unit based on whatever they're doing that day. So kind of pulls it together. And then also to figure out best way to teach and assess for students that kind of, everything that we've talked about, like UDL and positive behavior supports, that kind of incorporates everything, but what is the best way for these students to learn and also to be assessed by whatever this unit is. And finally, Knight said this, don't move on until they've got it. Mastery learning. We talked in class about a tier that we have for the content that all students should know, the content that some should know, and the last group should know. And that last group, kind of the tier 3, is probably going to be the deepest questions, the ones that require more critical thinking, synthesis of everything that they've learned. And I think that when you have those higher ended questions, you're going to find a way to include all students, not just the struggling ones, but the ones that might need to be challenged a little bit more. The second greatest takeaway that I took from instructional planning is the content maps and the unit organizer. I love the unit organizer. I'm a very visual person. I love maps and drawings and anything to help me understand things. And I think there's a lot of students who are like that, who just get a lot of text. And I think the content map is a great way to, and the unit organizer is a great way to put it out there visually and to kind of move things around and see how they fit. I've already used it in planning different lessons and stuff, and it always helps me figure out what I want to say, what needs to be addressed, how we're going to do it, what is the most important, and how they kind of relate to each other. I also think it deepens the material because the brainstorm process, when you use a content map, you're allowed to cross things out and change things around a little bit to make it fit. And so I really like that. I think it helps deepen the material, what you want to teach your students, what you want them to get from it. And I also think it's really useful for teachers for their lessons. Students can fill it in themselves, like we talked about in class, and they can really monitor their own learning that way. So I think that the unit organizer is one of the best ideas I've heard in a long time, just because it really appeals to me as a visual learner, and I'm sure it will appeal to others who are also visual learners. I think it's a way to incorporate UDL in instruction even, and I think it also incorporates UDL in that students with who learn differently can use the graphic organizer, because it has relationships, it has words, it can describe the relationships, and so it kind of appeals to like the variety of learners. And I think it can help students quiz themselves to make sure they know what they're learning. You can block things out to do homework assignments with it, like to show those relationships and kind of provide a big picture for what they're going to be learning about for the unit or the lesson or the year or whatever you want to do with it. In conclusion, I've learned a lot up to this point of the semester. I have a lot of new strategies, a lot of new ideas and ways to plan, ways to deliver instruction, ways to differentiate among students, and I'm really excited to use this in the classroom, not only as a teacher next year, but especially as a student teacher in the spring. We've learned a lot of invaluable lessons about teaching content to all, and I'm really excited to go ahead and use what we've learned